Hey everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's March 1st, 2023. My name's Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse is a DevOps accelerator. We help companies conquer AWS using our proven blueprints for Terraform. If you're starting from scratch or just not happy with what you have today, then you need to go to cloudposse.com/quiz and book a session with me, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So if you're curious about Cloud Posse or any of our open source tools, this is a great place to ask. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support what we do, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. So just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. That's youtube.com/cloudposse. So with that said, let's jump into some announcements. That's weird. I put them on the talking points. So there we go. So instead of, these are my talking points. So the first one was just a minor improvement. If you've been holding out for Postgres 15, you don't need to wait, hold your breath anymore. It's finally available for RDS. Matt, anything you want to add to that? All right.
Nope, just that I know a lot of people had been waiting for support for it.
Yeah, it's been lagging for some time. And it's not just on 15, like previously we were waiting for 12 support for a while and that finally dropped. So the other announcement was something else you shared with me. So CloudWatch has added internet monitor support as a ability to basically understand how end users are impacted by network connectivity issues to AWS. How is this similar from like APM that you get with Datadog, which will tell you kind of, performance at the edge?
I think this is kind of their first foray into that. It's not quite as robust and, and it's more at the network layer. Right now, so it's basically telling you from all sorts of different geographies all around the world what the reachability is and what the experience will be, and like latency and jitter and all of that kind of stuff for your applications. But I mean, if you look at how much revenue the likes of Datadog and New Relic and all of them are earning in this space, my guess would be that AWS is going to iterate themselves into having a product that's competitive with it. And it might not be as feature rich, but it will be good enough, quote unquote, so that they can probably siphon off a good percentage of all that revenue that's going to third parties right now. Yeah,
I see them doing that.
Do they talk about pricing or not yet?
No, but I'm guessing it's the cost per metric in CloudWatch.
Yeah, it's just CloudWatch at this point, I think. Yeah.
So I guess if you enable 500 cities times 25 cents, you get your price. I don't know, or I forget what the cost is per metric. All right. There was an update by LastPass on the incident. It is unfortunate. It was ultimately one of our brethren whose laptop was compromised. Apparently some third-party software running on there allowed some attackers to get access to it. And him being an admin on the network and having some encrypted backups on his laptop, somehow they were able to, I guess,
it actually turns out there were two separate instances where two DevOps engineers were targeted and their credentials were stolen. The second one, I think, is actually a little bit they're not publicizing it as much, where they're telling people, if you're a customer of LastPass, maybe go change all your passwords, et cetera, et cetera. But the second one says that the actors accessed backups, and they have no idea kind of what they did with those. And the backups contained both encrypted and unencrypted customer data. So that probably means if you've ever been a customer of LastPass, that your data is probably potentially has been accessed through this, through this breach. So, if you imagine someone who said they didn't trust, 2 years ago or a year ago said they didn't trust LastPass, and they moved over to 1Password or something, and they did the LastPass import and they deleted their account, that doesn't mean that all their data necessarily went away in all the previous backups that might be stored on the cloud out there. So if you ever use LastPass, sorry, change your passwords, rotate them as much as you can, as big of a pain in the butt as that will be.
Yeah. It reminds me of, there's a great write-up of another hack. I can't think of it. It'll come to me later. I'll share it. All right, let's see. Last announcement. This one's making its rounds. Previously on Office Hours, we talked about a Terraform curl provider. This is an alternative to that one, called aptly TerraCurl. It accomplishes the same thing. If you're familiar with the MasterCard provider to hit REST APIs, it's similar to that. Anybody who's used the MasterCard REST provider will know that it's a little bit more opinionated on specifically how the REST API has to function. It's not a generic way to call any endpoint over HTTP. This is implementing the curl API though, so you get raw access to the underlying parameters that you would pass to curl. I see some benefits in this possibly. One way we've used curl previously was to retrieve binary data like Lambda artifacts so that we could upload those to S3. The thing about Terraform's HTTP, built-in HTTP resource is that it doesn't allow anything that's not text plain. I'm curious if this supports binary results. Since it's in the state file, they would have to be base64 encoding those, and there is a limit to the size of the state file, I think. But anyways.
Not only that, but remember that whatever you're doing with this provider presumably also has to be idempotent, or you have to have some other way to signal like that it needs an update or whatever. Like you can't just keep calling it the same thing over and over again. Like I see posts which are generally like creating things. Like if you, I don't know like how this exactly flows into the workflow of reading the resource and making sure that the resource, like if someone made a change to that thing outside of Terraform, normally we would expect like to see a change because like someone went into the UI and changed something. Like if that same thing happened here, I'm not sure how this would know. Like is there a read of that, a read of that thing and then a comparison and then an update? Like it seems complicated to orchestrate with APIs like that are not specifically made for this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, obviously, since I only skimmed this. I did see though that they were handling like the specific destroy case, for example. So
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so perhaps there is some thought into how one can make it or handle stateful API endpoints.
Yeah.
All right. The last announcement I have is a minor one. If you're using open source or looking at a lot of GitHub repos, and sometimes a project's gone a little bit dormant or stale, but there are a lot of forks and you're pretty sure somebody's fixed that problem that you're having. It can be a challenge when there's 1,500 forks of a project and figuring out like who might have fixed that bug. So they've added now this ability to filter the forks. And one of those nice things is, yeah, you can see which of those forks has more stars, and then also which was recently updated. So the recently updated features what I like about it. So I can identify where a fix might be found. All right. Any other interesting announcements this week? This is all that caught my eye.
Yeah, I wanted to share one announcement,
Or Michael?
kind of adjacent, but just posted a link in the chat. AWS is pushing for certification at the professional level. And I think this may be a result of people interested in certification, but probably topping out at either the cloud professional or the solutions certified associate architect, associate developer, or SysOps associate, and not going to that next level to get the professional or professional SA or professional DevOps. So they've got this challenge going on right now where if you sign up, you get like 50% off a voucher or 50% discount, towards your exam for the professional exam. And I could see that as a push for people to keep the momentum going. If they started out on the Cloud Pro or SA associate or something like that, to push on to that next level, just so they could, have more people that are certified in AWS.
That's great. Thanks for sharing.
No problem.
I'll also post it in the Slack here.
I also posted 3 interesting announcements. If you scroll to the top of the Zoom chat.
All right.
So EKS launched support for 125. That was last Wednesday, but it was after office hours. There's also a blog post that goes into more details about what changed in 125. Yeah, the pod security policy removal is catching a lot of people, which is somewhat surprising because that's been a thing for a while. But I don't know. It's also fascinating to see how not everybody, but a lot of the community went from, hey, AWS support the latest version. Hey, AWS, when is the latest version getting released? To, hey, I know you're deprecating 1.19 tomorrow. Upgrade. The dramatic change from one extreme to the other is just fabulous to see.
I love that observation. It is true. It was always like this problem that they weren't having the latest Kubernetes version. I mean, this is going back over a year now or two. But yeah, the tides have changed and now we're getting bit by the other way. I was just thinking about this today, actually, unrelated to this, was just like, when are they going to have EKS Autopilot, right? So you don't have to really worry about these things as much. Autopilot feature on GKE, right? That'll keep it automatically up to date.
I would argue that's ECS, but I'm not gonna go there. Like
How does it work on GKE? I hadn't heard about that, because like if you move from 1.22 to 1.23, there's all kinds of breaking changes.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
you couldn't just do that automatically.
Yeah, it's not going to automatically fix your code and so forth, but I've heard that it makes keeping your clusters current much less painful. Any GKE users here can elaborate on it? What I would like to see, obviously, is a dashboard that would say, okay, we'll automatically upgrade you, but service A, B, D are blocking this upgrade because one's using pod security policy, one has outdated annotations for like the ingress API, etc. And then you go fix those, and then it unlocks the ability to do auto upgrades. I don't know. I'm just guessing how I would like a service like that to work, but
I thought Autopilot was more similar to Fargate. Like I
don't believe
don't
so.
know.
But okay, your cluster can include nodes.
Like, yeah, it's doing a lot
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
than
yeah.
Fargate.
You're right. That sounds a lot more like Fargate, but I thought it was also control plane upgrades too. Yeah, so I guess you can pin it to a release channel. But
So is
otherwise,
that
you're right.
like
Otherwise it's
managed
closest
groups,
to ETS
kind
Fargate.
of? So is that like managed node groups kind of ish? Something between managed node groups and Fargate? I don't know. I haven't done GKE in forever.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It is analogous to EKS Fargate profiles plus this release management. All right. So that's let's see, going back to the Zoom chat, let's see what else. Was there another one that you had in there?
Yeah, there were two
Firewall.
more links. So one is App Runner finally has support for WAF. A lot of people were asking for this. I'm really happy to see it launched. And the other one was something that AWS got a lot of hate for. So please be nice, don't be assholes on the internet, which is ECS now finally supports deletion of inactive task definitions revisions. Like you literally could not delete task definitions before this, and it was
Oh, that got me.
annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that feeling. And the worst part about it was that it would still complain to you if you tried to use them, and there would be confusion with developers all the time about that.
It caught me a lot because if you reuse the same name, like I don't know, maybe some Terraform, it created very weird versions because like they were still there, so it was increasing the versions and it led to weird bugs and like, why is this doing that? I haven't configured it to do that. Oh yeah, it's from 50 versions ago. Anyway, now they
Yeah.
can be deleted, and this was only if you find the GitHub issue for this on the containers roadmap, this is only the first release they're doing. So you can delete up to 10 task definitions in one API call, but they're now working on lifecycle policies for task definitions, which is awesome.
That would be even better. There's a lot
Yeah,
of craft
I'm-
around ECS.
Could you post a link to that task definition lifecycle policy
Yep.
kind of roadmap thing? Thank you.
Then I'm
Posted in the office hours there.
Oh,
Yeah, this is
Nice.
awesome for me for like development environments where there's a lot of churn, and basically the trigger for our ECS deployments for that environment that I was working in is the task definition itself. So, you know, the task definition changes the configuration for the environment. And if you're developing in that environment, then you're pushing maybe dozens of task definitions a day, you know, let alone how many you push in a week. And so then you get all this cruft of these basically thousands of task definitions that you just want to get rid of, you know, you just want to clean them up, but there was no good way to do that. So yeah, this is awesome. I'm very, very happy to see this.
Very cool.
And there is also an issue for the Terraform provider for AWS to support this. There's no PR, or there wasn't a PR last time I checked. Yeah, no, it's just an issue.
Does AWS still manage some of those providers? Like, I would imagine that there should be already some sort of PR for that.
Yeah, do you know anything about that, Vlad?
No comment.
All
And we're gonna leave it at that.
right.
Look, go look at the contributors, and you'll start answering your own question probably.
Yeah, there should be AWS employees in contributors, but I don't know what more else I can say beyond that.
Yeah.
Not even trying to start that discussion. I was actually innocently asking, by the way.
All right. Let's see. So there's one question here from Radha. Is there a tool to convert PSP to OPA? So PSP policies to OPA policies. What language are PSP policies? Pod security policies to OPA policies. Got it.
YAML.
Good, fair question. I'm not sure. All right. Let's see other questions. Yeah, fair enough. I forget what the replacement is for pod security policies and how it's implemented now in Kubernetes.
Mission controller, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's the pod security admission controller. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So PSP is the old way of describing the policies in the Kubernetes manifest, and now switching over to the new method. I can't remember what that's named actually. Pod security admission control, maybe, as you said there.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I'm not the one who's running kube clusters every day. I'm much more theoretical than hands-on these days with Kubernetes.
Yeah. Quick, somebody chat GPT it. All right. I had to turn on the AC here. It's getting hot in Houston.
Oh, don't rub it in. It's cold here. I looked it up. It is definitely pod security admission controller, and then it has the policies that you can write for that. Here's the link for anyone that's
then
interested.
Connecting the dots, is there now something that helps you translate the PSP then?
I don't know of any automated tool that does it. It's basically just a different YAML structure.
Yeah. All right. Let's move into more questions here. Let's see if anything more has been posted in the chat here. Do not see anything else. Yeah, so open mic. Anybody have any questions? Ah, come on. No one?
I mean, I have topics, may
All
not
right.
necessarily, I mean, they're tangential. One thing I noticed today, and I'll see if I can find a link to paste it into the Slack chat here, or the Zoom chat rather, is Notion has added AI to their platform as well. And yeah, so I mean, I'm just interested in this pervasiveness, this explosion of like AI assisted everything. And just curious if anybody's a Notion user, if they've seen this. I did a quick test today where it's like there's a brainstorming feature or something, and you just start telling the AI brainstorm about this or whatever, and it'll give you a bunch of topics that it's sourced from wherever it sourced them from. And I appreciate it because it's better to start from a page of AI generated stuff sometimes than a blank page, because at least that'll get your wheels turning. You'll read what the AI said and you're like, this is crap. Oh, this kind of makes sense. I'll use that, or maybe I'll start here, or whatever the case is. But the one, I'll offer one other example, but I'll just pause there to see if anybody's used Notion AI, or if they're planning to use it, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, it's a excuse me, it's a beta feature that you have to request, and then there's like a waiting list, and they opt certain people in. So I just got opted in maybe like a week ago or something like that, and I played around with it a little bit, and I found it kind of like very similar to ChatGPT, but with the additional context awareness of the fact that it's inside Notion, so you can ask it to do like create tables for you, or change, or create a template in Notion for you, or do, it does a whole bunch of different things like for you that are Notion specific and like that. But that's kind of how I see it. It seems similar in functionality other than the Notion awareness.
When you were saying that, the context with the Notion, I was thinking, my mind went somewhere else. It's still cool what you said.
Yeah.
Like
it doesn't know all your notes.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it was actually contextually aware of your notebooks and could derive insights from that when asking it. That would be powerful.
No.
Is it at all related to Open API releasing their API today, I believe?
No, this actually has been, they announced this before like everyone in the world was talking about Open API, like, whatever, a year ago or something. They talked about this being on their roadmap and that they were working on it. So, I mean, it could be tangentially related, but this isn't just Notion trying to play catch up. They've been working on this for quite a while.
All
right. The other thing I was going to mention, and I just dropped the link into the Zoom chat, is what do they call this? Code GPT. It's a Visual Studio Code. What do they call that? Extension that basically gives you Chat GPT access inside your Visual Studio IDE. And people are, I think the one article I looked at on this was comparing it. It might have been a review, I'm not sure. We're saying that this one is less intrusive than GitHub Copilot. And I love GitHub Copilot and I hate GitHub Copilot at the same time for that particular reason, because it's very intuitive on like what I'm doing. And I could like type a comment or type some code, and I want to do that code iteratively, and I'll go to the next line and start typing, and it'll, be ready to fill out exactly what I want to do, hit tab, and I accept it, and it's great. But often it'll be on the wrong path. Like it'll do something totally off the map of what I'm trying to do. And it's kind of hard, at least in Vim, to escape out of that and do what I actually want to do in some cases. I like this feature here, this Code GPT, because you do your code and then you actually have to hit a keystroke to get what you want to get from the tool, and it gives you the feedback. The one hesitation I had with this was the way that the API key is set up. With the GitHub Copilot, it's I believe like it's basically like you're logging into GitHub as a regular user, and all your credentials are kind of hidden behind your GitHub login. It's authorized and everything. With this one, you pretty much have to put your Chat GPT or your Open API key somewhere in your Visual Studio Code settings. And I have my settings like synchronized across my GitHub account so that I could use it in GitHub Codespaces and other places. But I'm just kind of like unsure of how to configure this thing so that my API key isn't exposed in some funky kind of way. So I didn't know if there's anybody that had used this guy and, actually was a little more confident about publishing or, installing their API key than I am.
All right, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that one. I look forward to plugging that one in and trying it out.
Yeah, like Vlad pointed out, I was interested in AWS CodeWhisperer because I think their big selling point is, VSCode is all from, Copilot is all from the internet, whereas like everything from CodeWhisperer is kind of comes from AWS best practices and, focused on some of their SDKs and stuff like that. So I'm curious if anybody had tried CodeWhisperer.
I can comment on that. Eric, this was a meme related to the ChatGPT discussion. So folks that are writing emails basically will end up taking a simple prompt like, I want job, here's my resume. They're gonna send it ChatGPT, make it like fancy bullshit marketing talk. And on the receiver end, they will, of course, use ChatGPT to get a short resumed email, which is going to be the same goddamn thing. And good job, Tosh. Like, good job. We made the world better.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into my ChatGPT is bullshit. Not bullshit. A very dangerous product. Let's gloss over that and move into CodeWhisperer. I actually had a thread about a year ago comparing CodeWhisperer and GitHub Copilot. Surprisingly, and again, this was forever ago, CodeWhisperer was better with one exception. I don't remember what it was, and I don't know if the service is still in preview, to be honest with you. Give me a minute to find the thread. But yeah, CodeWhisperer was pretty nice. They also have a very nice feature unlike GitHub where they tell you where they got the source code from.
I like that.
So if they're actually, what's it called, reference checker or something like that, they tell you, hey, this code is based a lot on this open source repository. Like, hey, we stole it from here, which is really, really nice. They had, again, when I last used it, a bunch of integrations for VSCode and for IntelliJ, but that was in a private beta before being released. So let me find the Twitter thread thingy. I had a good experience with it initially, but I gave up on it. I finally found the Twitter thread thingy. And Safari froze on me. Good job, Safari. Yeah, I pasted the link in the Zoom chat. I gave up on things like Copilot and CodeWhisperer because they end up being pretty shit. There have been multiple reports on this and research papers, but basically they make you make worse and more subtle bugs that take you longer to identify. And that has been the case in both. So I was working with two clients that specifically went all in on GitHub Copilot. And yeah, that was the case. Like everybody, both of them had to roll back because it turned out to create more work than time that it was saving. And it wasn't great. And since then, like this was still early. CodeWhisperer wasn't even a thing then. And since then, there have been a lot more research and use cases shared by folks, and this seems to be a common trend. Like it's fine for, and again, this is what I recommend clients. I could be wrong, I am a dum-dum. But it's fine for senior people that understand what's happening. Or if you're using a new API or SDK and you're not yet familiar with it and you just want to get something up and running fast. But for everything else, it's be adding in a lot of bugs using API versions from 3 years ago or something like that, or very insecure code. It's creating a lot more work than it's saving. That was the conclusion. So it's right now, it's something that I'm advising against.
Yeah, and actually, I found it so totally the same thing with ChatGPT. You know, it's funny how you read so many posts about, oh yeah, you can get ChatGPT to write code for you and whatever. It's true, but I've tried it a fair bit just to explore. And if you're a novice at the language, you can't rely on it. Like as Vlad is saying, you do have to have a certain expertise because it makes mistakes, it makes assumptions, it leaves things out. In some cases, it'll even mix concepts. Like I remember trying, I was asking it, write. I had a piece of code in Terraform, and I was just curious. I gave it to ChatGPT, and I said, simplify this piece of code. It was, doing a for loop to restructure a little object or something, and I brought in the concept of a map function, which didn't actually exist in Terraform. It was taken from JavaScript or something like that. So it's funny how it makes those kinds of mistakes, and then in some cases it'll throw you off tangents. So the notion that you can just translate things without being having a good amount of knowledge in the target domain is wrong. Like this morning I saw a post about using ChatGPT to translate PSP to OP8, ironically. Someone asked about that earlier, and there's a presentation by the CNCF or something that's about that. Raise an eyebrow there, because it's going to be the same thing, and especially for security. You don't want to make mistakes there. So,
how well does it generate unit tests for developers?
I mean, that would be the next evolution, right?
Yes.
I would love that.
I have a friend whose company is using a Copilot for ChatGPT to create content and get rid of the people that generate content on their site, and just have editors to edit it from whatever content they get.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the long run.
Yeah. Yep.
That is pissing me off so much. There is so much spam. Like, it wasn't enough that every single junior was incentivized to create bullshit tutorials. Like, I'm fine with tutorials. I'm fine with juniors writing stuff. I am fine with learning in public. Seeing a bunch of blog posts that are a first look at service X, and it's literally clicking next in the quick start wizard, and that's it, was already a problem, and it's getting worse and worse now that this can be automated. So we're gonna get a lot more shit content, which is fabulous.
Yeah, I fear that as well. So let's see who was it who posted. Darren Pham posted this link to GruCloud, automatically generate infrastructure as code, visualize, deploy, and destroy. Has anyone heard of the service?
No, but I'm not surprised it came up.
Yeah, I saw this from a thread that I was reading about, which actually is a very interesting thread. It was basically a thread from that was extended from someone's blog post that talked about who should write Terraform, and a very interesting discussion about platform engineering versus embedded, quote unquote, DevOps. And someone mentioned this, and it was obviously from the person that created it, but it seemed interesting, which I was kind of wondering if anyone has actually used it with any level of success. As you know, Terraform doesn't allow you to create Terraform from pre-existing resources. So their claim here is pretty strong, if not maybe a little worrisome, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to try it out, and I was going to give it a test, but I don't have time.
That functionality is actually something that Terraform's been promising since the day they started, right? That they tried to say they were going to do.
I mean, a lot of companies promise a lot of things, but I honestly don't think they're ever going to do it, because they're not in the business of unpacking your infrastructure. They're in the business of getting you set up with new infrastructure and, possibly use their HCP environment to make money. So I don't think they would. But nevertheless, yeah, just wanted to see if anyone has actually used this. I haven't had the time to dig into it, but if it actually works, it seems very interesting.
I'm still just absorbing the tool. I mean, there's a few tools obviously that have been out there, like Terraformer or whatever from Google Cloud. There's another one.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Microsoft. Yeah. But it seems like this does maybe it does both from live, but it sounds like you can also almost describe what you want it to be, and it'll generate that too.
Yeah, there's another service that someone had mentioned. It used TypeScript though. But this is more interesting for me because there's a lot of AWS accounts created by, lots of different teams where I'm at. And if I can just package that as it is and maybe add some governance or security around it.
Yeah, Mike Percival shares Terra Cognito is another tool. My just warning about all of these things is don't get too excited. And they've come up in the past. It's basically as enjoyable as working on disassembled, code from binaries. Sure, you can do it. It's code, but it's just not how humans write it. So it's probably not going to be very enjoyable. That's
the same thing with ChatGPT, right? It gives you code, but
well, yes and no, but it's a little different, I think. But I guess it's, you're not wrong in saying it that way.
well, I think what I mean to say is like it gives you something that works, but infrastructure code is very, very different than just a function with inputs and outputs. And
yeah, you're gonna want libraries.
Maybe it shouldn't be, but that's a whole other story.
I thought of that too. Maybe exactly. Like at a certain point, then you just got to be happy enough with the that it's opaque. Like when you write C++ code or anything else under the hood, it's all assembly. You don't have to care what that looks like.
Yeah, I think the one comment I'll make about ChatGPT generating code in this whole thing is that my experience has been the better you are at writing prompts, the better response back you get from ChatGPT. Yeah. Like the more specific and detailed you are about what you want it to return you, and using common patterns and describing computer science concepts and all of those types of things, it does a really good job of following your instruction to give you something that resembles what you asked for. I'm not saying it's perfect, but the difference between write me a function that does this and that and write me a function using functional programming that is pure, that takes this as with this type as an input and returns this as this type as an output, yield two vastly different things when you go and do those types of things.
So like a developer, I feel like a developer that would be really good at using ChatGPT would also be just as a good enough developer to just write the code, right?
Yeah, I think if you look at it as, but like I use it, I found myself using it pretty frequently now, and I find that like I can describe in prose much quicker what I want the function to do than I can in code. And
I think it depends on how tedious.
It depends what you're developing.
Yeah.
But I can say I definitely feel like I'm getting a productivity boost from using it.
Okay.
Like that's my personal experience.
And
that'll be the next job posting, right? Someone who can learn ChatGPT queries.
Right. And technical interview questions will just be how well can you create the best ChatGPT input to create a really good function?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to coin the term prompt engineer. Like I'm an AI prompt engineer. Well, one test, I was just going to offer a testimony to what you're talking about, Matt. So I was using ChatGPT to generate mock data for an API. And I said, I'm just using universities as an example, right? So I said, generate, I gave it the schema that I wanted, like the name of the school, the location, like some other details about the school. And I said, generate the data for all the universities in the United States using the schema. And the snarky response it gave back was, there's so many schools in the US, I can't do that because it'll take too long or something like that. So then I narrowed it down to, I said, well, give me all the schools from the Big Ten or something like that. And it knew what the Big Ten was and started generating the schools from the Big Ten. I was like, oh, that's pretty slick. So I said, continue with the Atlantic Coast Conference. And it did it same thing with those. So it's like the context that was built in, I didn't even tell it to use that specific context, but being able to narrow it down to those schools really limited, or really kind of gave me the output that I needed with that subtle change in the prompt.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Has anyone?
and I can. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to briefly ask, has anyone had success in telling it to create tests as well for the code that it writes?
Yep.
Yes.
It works.
Awesome. That's cool.
And I can say, like, I'm working on a side project on just something with like natural language processing and like doing a bunch of things, and like literally telling ChatGPT, hey, write me a machine learning model that uses the Spacey library in Python that does X, Y, and Z. Like, if you're very specific about it, it very quickly generates code that is at least like 75 or 80% of the way there, which would have taken me like, 10 or 15 or 20 minutes to like get to that point, just hacking at it myself. And I got it in, 30, 40 seconds of writing a prompt, or a minute of whatever of writing a prompt, and then getting the response back. And that's the kind of productivity boost I'm talking about, like those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value there. And thank you for teaching me about this. What about the inverse? If you provide ChatGPT like a 1,000-line code, right? And it's like, tell me what this is doing.
Yeah, it does a good job.
It does
like
that too?
explaining it. Yeah.
Wow.
GPT Commit too. We shared on Office Hours, which is pretty cool. It'll summarize the what of your commit has changed, not the why, though we haven't tried. I wonder if one could try and coax it into telling you the why with the proper prompts, but.
So you can give it like a repo and say, like, what does this do? Like, what is?
No, you can't.
Well,
okay.
You can't give it a repo because it doesn't have internet access, but if you copy and paste code into it and you say, explain to me what this code is doing, like, it will give you a step-by-step summary of like what's happening in the code. It's pretty good at doing that.
But haven't you found, Matt, that it tends to be very low level? In other words, like, it'll explain individual statements, which often, if you know the language, it's fairly useless. You quite often, what's not obvious is interdependencies and preconditions and those kinds of subtleties that don't make it into the comments.
I would challenge you to look at what your prompts are and what you're asking it to do. Like, if you get specific enough and you get good enough at writing the prompts, it will not give you the basics. It will give you like the complexities of what's happening in the code, not the explanation of the language itself.
Okay, interesting.
You can even tell it, like, I'm an expert in Python, but I need an explanation of what this, what business logic this function is trying to, trying to achieve or whatever. And it will skip over giving you the, like, the basics of what the Python language is doing or whatever. I'm just using that as one example. But you can coax it into telling you what you want with the right prompts in most cases. And by no means am I saying it's perfect. And I will say Terraform, I've had the least amount of success using it with Terraform. I've definitely found that it's a productivity boost for myself.
So what you're saying is I should prefix every prompt with explain like I'm 5, right? Just no.
If you want that, and legit, you can tell it different levels of your understanding, and it will gear the response based on your level of understanding. Like, you can literally go in and be like, explain quantum computing to me like I'm a 5th grader, and it will break down quantum computing like that. But if you say, like, I have a PhD in molecular biology, explain quantum computing to me, it uses far different language and response when it speaks back to you.
Really cool. I'll have to look into it some more. Thank you.
I would throw one other thing out there. I've used it a lot for refactors, and I think my preferred workflow is writing something that I know I want, and maybe a less ideal, more of a large not as composable fashion. And then because ChatGPT kind of gets seeded with all of the basic logic that I want, then I'll go back through and instead of going through the tedium of refactors, I'll typically go and I'll start to add patterns and function names. So I found it to be more useful for me as a refactoring tool than as a code writing tool. And I think that that follows true with like, if you're not getting a lot of success from Terraform, I found that it sometimes does a decent job of figuring out how to take a module or a resource and turning it into one that is actually, say, a part of a series, right? A count or for each. So having like, you might practice teaching it to refactor with you, and you might find that that actually gives you more success than just saying, please write this thing, right? Just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah, to be fair, most of my Terraform stuff has been like the crazy, I have a data structure that looks like this, and I want the output to look like, foo. Please, write, a transformation of that for me using for each or for each, or whatever. And it's been less than great. That's been my answer on that one. So
Can it
in
contextualize
Terraform specifically? I don't know, like other things. I don't know why.
can it contextualize package usage? So if I say, like, given your example, if I have let's say I tell it to, hey, as a pandas data frame input with these values, right? I want to extrapolate this and do some arithmetic over that. Is it able to and pandas? And
yep. Oh yeah, 100%. As long as it had access to it the last time the model was updated, basically and it's like something that it knows. Like if you use like some obscure thing that the code only exists inside your company, no, but like Pandas and Spacey and NLTK and all of those kind of things that are popular data science labs, it knows all about those and how to use them and how to do that kind of stuff.
Good for even like SQL queries. Like if you can't remember something on a SQL query, it'll give you whatever you need.
Yep. Use long SQL query aliases. I actually used it recently, I think 2 or 3 days ago. I was editing a GraphQL query, and remembering how to pull apart the nodes and edges logic when you're doing queries that have to use that feature to sort of join together different queries. It can be really tedious, but it's a lot easier when you're just kind of like, okay, I'll show Chat GPT how to query this and how to query that. Okay, now let me actually write a function that says, here is the X with some of the B that is related to it, like posts that have comments, kind of a thing. And it just puts the whole query out for you, and oftentimes gets all of the different nested, dereferencing perfect.
Cool applications. Who is it? Michael Martin shared another link. Don't be fooled by serverless. Do you want to highlight something here, Michael?
I just thought it was pretty interesting, and right now I'm kind of studying for the the developer associate AWS exam, and just was digging deep into Lambda because I've never really used it too much, and it really is just like these little micro VMs. And so just the premise here of like, hey, the VPC or the clouds, they just have this one big server and they just sell little pieces of it essentially, or little portions of it. It just kind of resonated with me a little, and to see how they make a profit, small things like how they make a profit, and then at the end, the little fact that they may have built AWS because they have all these servers, and throughout the year, outside of Black Friday and Christmas, they have more unused capacity than they know what to do with. So I just thought it was a fun little article summing up my experience with serverless so far. my limited use of serverless, I should say.
So this is talking about just Lambdas, not about, say, OpenFaaS on Kubernetes.
Right.
Gotcha.
I don't know. I read this article or blog post as well, and
Sorry, blog post.
I'll have to say no. I wasn't correcting you. I was just correcting myself, like with whatever it was. And I used to have like extremely deep respect for DHH and a lot of his technical prowess and his opinions and a lot of the early on ways that they published about how they worked and how they got productivity done at 37 Signals and all that kind of stuff. I was a big fan of that. And the more I've read recently about like their decision-making process and moving away from the cloud and why they're doing that and the calculations they're using and all that kind of thing is like I've started to lose some of that that high regard that I held them in. As I've read more and more of this, it's been disappointing, I guess, somewhat to me that like some of their analysis seems like extremely suspect to me with some of the stuff they're putting out. Like there's some underlying agenda that they're not saying what it is, but all this stuff ties back to that underlying agenda. Yeah, did they? Okay.
An underestimation. It's utter bullshit. And I don't want to get started on this because we have 3 minutes left. This is so the debate. I will read my chat message. It is utter bullshit used to push their new deployment tool, Merck, and it's actually hurting the should we do serverless debate by using, excuse my language, dumb fuck arguments. That's what this is doing. And the previous also dumb fuck blog posts are glossing over the important and vital debate of what workloads should be in the cloud, what is the cloud not a fit for, and how do we do hybrid workloads by focusing on kindergarten level understanding of economics. It's hurting the actual debate that we need to have by using bullshit arguments and creating drama, again, to promote their new deployment tool that they just released yesterday. Woo! Yeah. They basically rewrote Docker Swarm. That's it. I pasted the YouTube link in the chat.
Yeah, so I missed that news. So I missed that news of that there's a tool, and so that makes a lot of sense to me. I suspected that there was some underlying thing, so this definitely makes sense that this is the why behind it.
I didn't realize I'd stir up so much emotion from Vlad.
It's hurting a very important conversation that we need to do. And like, that's okay, that's annoying for me. But worse, this is a person that is being looked up to. It's a person that is highly alleged. No, that's mean of me. It's a person that is highly technical and had a big impact on a lot of developers by building Ruby on Rails. And a lot of people are looking up to this person, and this person is spewing bullshit. That is creating a new generation of confused developers and developers that don't understand stuff. I expect a higher standard from somebody in that position, and him doing this bullshit is disgusting.
Yeah, it's funny. We both came to the same conclusion. I was just missing the why portion of it.
I don't think anybody ever moves to cloud to expect savings, right? Like that's never like the driving factor from my understanding.
Oh,
it's
I
about.
feel like it was like 8 years ago.
I mean, it was, but
that was the initial like sale. You save your money, and then
you pay for what you use, and you can spin up and scale down. I mean, back in the day, whatever EC2 servers you need, instead of buying, rack and stacking yourself, and having to hire a network engineer and sysadmins. But I think that's still true today. No.
Yeah, I think your analysis is, and I know we're out of time, but I'll say it quickly. I think your analysis depends on the size and the scale of the company that you're talking about. Like small startups and even maybe some medium-sized businesses, it's definitely cheaper to run on the cloud than it is to run like your own. It's definitely cheaper that way. But I think specifically the argument I was talking about with them is they're moving. They have they said $3 million a year AWS spend or something like that, and they're going to move that to their own data centers and claim that they're saving like 30% or 40% or something. Something
which is
just seemed
true,
absurd
though,
to me.
right?
I don't know that it is, but we'll talk about it on another call.
Yeah.
Since
Well,
we're
I mean,
at the top.
it's upfront costs, it's management, it's lifetime care and maintenance. There's DR, there's
There's
a lot of things that if you're just looking at just the strict compute, then yeah, on-prem is always going to be cheaper, no matter how you split it. But it's
What
all
you choose to
about
look at ultimately.
You can't look at just the strict compute though. Like
that's
to
what
get
I'm
an
saying.
apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, so maybe that extra
yeah.
30% overhead is worth it. If it's like I don't have to hire, 5 more engineers to maintain it. And
Yeah,
I'm trying to argue either way. I'm just trying to get a better perspective on.
My point is that the analysis that they're saving 30% over AWS is actually extremely flawed, because they didn't take into account what it takes to run a 24/7 operation, to maintain all the servers and services that actually like support a large thing like Basecamp and Hey and all of these tools that they have out there for people. But maybe some of it makes sense for moving to on-prem. My whole point is just that I don't think that their financial analysis of it was intellectually honest. That's all I was saying.
No, that's very likely true.
All right, well, we are out of time. I think we struck a chord on this one. Maybe we'll pick up that conversation next Wednesday on Office Hours. To catch this episode and all our past episodes, you can go to youtube.com/cloudposse. We post them there every week. To connect with me on LinkedIn, go to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. If you're curious about working with Cloud Posse, go to cloudposse.com/quiz. We post a weekly newsletter. All these links, all the interesting goodness that we share on these office hours are syndicated out through our newsletter. So if you haven't yet subscribed to our office hours, that's really easy. Just go to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. Thank you all. See you all next week. Have a great rest of your week.